Mr. Cacciatore, you may proceed.
Your Honor, we had tendered the witness to the defense.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Henderson, you may proceed with any cross-examination.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Now, it's my understanding that on February 24th of 2020, you responded to this crime scene. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you the first officer to respond to the crime scene?
No.
So there were other officers who were there prior to you arriving. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you the first detective to respond to the crime scene?
Myself and my partner, we all arrived at the same time because we left from the same location at the same time.
Okay, and who is your partner that day?
Detective Scott Lowen?
And throughout the whole time, you and Detective Lowen worked on this case together, is that correct?
Yes, he assisted me with this case.
Now, when you arrived on the 24th, approximately how many other officers were there?
Including, like, deputy sheriffs, like in uniform?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Approximately 4, maybe, I would assume.
Had it been designated a crime scene at that time, and had tape or security measures been taken to protect the scene?
Yes, they had.
All right, so that had already been done by the time that you arrived, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, in the investigation, one of your, or what you're trying to accomplish in the investigation is basically get a basics of what took place. Would you agree with me there?
Yes, I would.
All right. And you can do that one or two ways, or a combination of ways. One is to take testimony of potential witnesses, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. On this day, did you in fact do that?
Yes, I did.
And one of those potential witnesses was Sarah Boone, is that correct?
Yes, it was.
And you took a statement from Sarah Boone because we've all seen it, is that correct?
Yes, we have.
And at that point in time, Ms. Boone did not have to talk to you if she didn't want to, did she?
No, she did not.
So she agreed to talk to you at that point in time?
Yes, she did.
Okay. Were there any other witnesses besides Ms. Boone that you talked to on this initial date of the 24th?
Just Brian Boone.
And Mr. Boone told you what? You had a chance to talk to him. He told you his involvement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, wasn't Mr. Boone's testimony, was that recorded too?
I conducted an audio recording, yes.
Is that standard procedure when you do your interviews to try to record the interviews?
Yes.
What's the benefit of that?
So I know what was said.
Okay. So, and if something goes on for a long time, you can refer back to it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, and out there, that's part of talking to witnesses or potential witnesses. Okay. Also, it's your job too to identify potential physical evidence in a case.
Yes, it is.
All right. And in fact, on the 24th, did you do that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you have anyone assisting you in doing that aspect of it?
Yes, crime scene investigators and digital forensics investigator.
All right. And was Miss Melissa Roffengarden, is that how it's pronounced? Pronounce it for me.
Rough Garden.
Rothgarden. Okay, thank you. Did she help you in that area?
She was the lead crime scene investigator, yes.
Okay. So were y'all walking around together? Give the jury an idea of how that process takes place, please.
So yes, when I initially arrived on scene, I introduced myself to Sarah Boone and explained that I wished to go inside her residence, which she gave me consent to go in and look around. I went in, looked around, and then when my CSIs arrived, they would go in, take pictures, and then I kind of leave them to do what they need to do as far as taking pictures and documenting things and measurements. And then that's when I conducted my interviews. And then I would meet back up with my crime scene investigator after interviews were conducted, to kind of follow up with like things that I was told that would help us like identify things from the scene. And so, I mean, there's like multiple occasions where I would have met with my crime scene investigator inside the residence.
So this is an ongoing process during that day. You get information, you consult with them, they have information, they consult with you, and you're making a determination of what potential physical evidence that y'all at least like to document by camera, correct, or pictures, or actually collect and take away. Is that correct?
Yes, that's accurate.
All right. In that case, the suitcase was some evidence that y'all agreed on that we need to take this suitcase from the scene. Is that correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay. How about the baseball bat? Was that done that day?
The baseball bat was collected, yes.
All right. In your viewing of the suitcase, did you view the suitcase while it was unseen?
Yes, I did.
All right. Did you notice that if there was any items, other independent loose items in the suitcase?
There were, yes.
Were those items collected?
Some of them were, yes.
Who made the determination what items of that suitcase would be taken or collected and what would not be collected?
I would say that I have the final say on what is to be collected or not collected, but we do discuss it together to make that determination for me to give the final yes or no.
Do you recall which items you decided to collect from the suitcase?
Do you have the property form that I can refer to?
No, I'll try to find it.
I know some of them, but
Ma'am, I don't have it, but to the best of your memory, can you tell? And I would understand there would be some stuff that if you had the property report to refresh your memory, you can give me more detail.
yes, to my understanding and to my recollection, we collected things that had blood left over on it. I want to say there was like a necktie potentially. I do recall there being a small amount of clothing and miscellaneous paperwork, but I do not think that we collected the paperwork. There was also a cell phone in there. It was not, it was dead, the cell phone. And then, like I said, there might be one, I think we collected 5 to 6 items from the suitcase itself, but obviously the property form would tell you specifically. But that is what I recall.
Correct, and I understand, and that's fair. Okay. So potentially you collect these items because you believe they're evidence for the case potentially, is that correct?
Yes.
And some of these items you actually collect with the potential that you might need to have them examined in greater detail, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. An example of something like that would be in this case, if you found blood on something, you might want to potentially examine that. Is that correct?
Yes.
And also the stuff that you're learning outside of these items also helps you in making that determination. Isn't that correct?
I'm sorry, one more time.
The stuff that you learn, the information that you're getting or you're receiving about what happened at that time will lead you to determine what items might need to be collected and what items might need to be tested.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So out of the items that were collected at the house or the apartment, at those items, was anything to your knowledge sent off for further examination?
I believe so. but if it was, there would be, they would be sent to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for further testing.
Okay. And do you have an independent memory of what items that were collected from the house that were sent to FDLE for further examination?
I don't recall specifically without looking.
Okay. Now, are you aware at one point in time, there were some fingernail clippings or fingernail swabs taken from Miss Sarah Boone? Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. In fact, that was done on her interview date, on the, would have been the 25th?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's what we witnessed in the video.
Yes.
That's what they were doing at that time, correct? And I'm sure at the autopsy, which you were present at, is that correct?
Yes.
And those, there would have been some fingertip swabs of Jorge Torres. Were you familiar with that?
They do swabbing of the hands, to my understanding, and clippings of his nails.
Okay. Do you have an independent memory of the fact that Sarah Boone's fingernail swabs were sent to FDLE for comparison?
I would believe so.
Okay. How about the ones from Mr. Torres? Do you have knowledge that those were sent to FDLE for comparison or identification?
Well, they would have come from him, so I'm not sure what we would have compared him to.
Okay. Were they there to see, or at least they're sent there to see if they can extract DNA?
Oh, okay. Yes. I mean, I'm not sure if they did that testing for his nails clipping specifically, but it would be in the report if so.
Okay. Who would make the decision about sending his finger swabs to FDLE for comparison or evaluation?
I would request it I would request it to the crime scene investigator, and she would, author the, I guess, procedure for them to do so.
Okay. And then as to Sarah Boone's swabbings, who requested that those be sent to FDLE for evaluation?
Again, I would assume that I would have done that. I would have requested the CSI to do that.
Are you aware of the results from those evaluations? I'm not asking you for the results, just if you're aware of the results.
I believe I'm aware, but would love to see a report before I specifically answer.
Yes, I'm not going to ask you a specific question
okay.
about it, okay? All right. But basically, you're aware that it was done, the procedure was done?
Yes.
The analysis was done, okay. Now, ma'am, so you're through the first day, then we get to the second day, which would have been, I believe, the 25th of February, is that correct?
Yes.
And on the 25th of February, was Mr. Torres' autopsy done at that time?
Yes, it was.
Were you present during the autopsy?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And did you communicate with the medical examiner at that time?
Yes, I did.
During the course of things, is that where you found out through the medical examiner at the autopsy that there was blunt force trauma injuries?
Yes, that is where I learned more about his injuries.
Now, initially, when you were on the scene on the 24th, did you view Mr. Torres's body?
Yes, I did.
Did you notice in and of yourself on your own something that caused you concern that there might be blunt force trauma injuries?
Yes, I noticed injuries to him, yes.
So after the autopsy, you had additional information, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Now, there was an interview, well, I don't know if it was an interview. There was a meeting set up for Sarah Boone, is that correct?
Yes.
On the 25th? Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell me how that meeting was arranged or how that meeting was set up, please?
So either before I left the scene, the night of the incident, I obviously met with Sarah and told her that we were leaving. We had to go make next of kin notification. And I would have either at that time said I would like to meet tomorrow and arranged it then, at least to like let her know that I would like to meet after the autopsy. And then obviously from watching the video towards the end, she said something about like recalling a conversation that we had, like calling me. So there may have been a phone conversation that occurred later that evening where I either would have confirmed the time or told her the time then. I just don't have that like on an audio. But I know it either took place before I left the scene because I obviously would have, said my goodbyes and told her, hey, we're leaving, we're going to make next of kin notification. She was very concerned about that, so I would want her to know that we were doing that. So it either took place then or it took place on that phone conversation that we had.
Okay. All right. The day prior to that, on the 24th, ma'am, you received Sarah Boone's phone, is that correct?
Yes, her phone was on the scene, yes.
And when you received that phone, Sarah Boone had given you that phone, is that correct?
No, she was not allowed in the apartment to give me the phone.
I'm sorry, did she give you permission to take the phone?
Yes.
Okay, is that correct?
Yes, I was given permission to go through her phone, yes.
Because at that time, you hadn't applied for any type of search warrant to get or search the phone, is that correct?
No, it was based off of consent.
Okay, so she had consented to you for you to have her phone, is
Yes.
that correct? She also provided you the code to get in the phone, is that correct?
Yes.
So at this point in time, Ms. Boone is cooperating with you, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Now, ma'am, do you recall telling her, Ms. Boone, that she could get her phone back the next day?
I don't recall specifically telling her when she would be able to get her phone back, but I did say something along the lines of we were now going to be taking the phone. I obviously had digital come out for consent to go through her phone. There was evidence on her phone that I needed to be downloaded, and at the time, I was willing to give back her phone before going through it, and then once we had gone through it, and those videos were found, I felt like this was very different, and it changed my perspective on consent. And I decided at that time that it was best to write a search warrant. So consent couldn't be, basically, like I knew I was going to take her phone. So consent has to be basically given to me throughout the entire period. So she would have had no way to contact me to tell me she no longer consented. So therefore, because there was evidence on the phone, I took the phone. Basically, I potentially told her, maybe we didn't get a full download. I may have said something along the lines of that. As far as me taking the phone, and then I wrote a search warrant. I either started writing the search warrant the night of, but it wasn't signed until, I didn't submit it until the next day. And then it was signed the next day, on the 25th.
So basically, what you're telling us is that she could have withdrawn her consent at any time prior to that search warrant being received, is that correct?
Well, while I was on scene, but at the end of the day, there was evidence on the phone, so I knew I could go through I knew I could get a search warrant to go through the phone based off there being evidence, like the 911 calls, and her explaining to me that they had spoken to family members.
Please silence your cell phones.
Since they had explained to me that they spoke with family members the night prior, so I wanted to obviously corroborate her statement. So I knew that I would be able to get into the phone through a search warrant. But yes, she could have not consented, and she could have not signed the paper consenting while we were on scene.
But before you left scene, you knew that Sarah Boone was not going to get that phone back. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So when Sarah Boone called you the next day, asking you about bringing her phone back, did you just tell her, Ms. Boone, you're not getting your phone back?
There was not a conversation about her not getting her phone back. She may have inquired about her phone, and I would have explained that we will talk about it when we meet that afternoon.
Okay. So, did you reach out to Ms. Boone that next day, or did Ms. Boone reach out to you?
I don't recall a specific, if she reached out to me the night of the 24th or before the interview on the 25th. I don't have my call records for that. I'm just basing it off of the interview where she had basically said that, yeah, I have your business card and I can contact you like I did. So my assumption would be that we did have some sort of conversation either the night of the 24th or before the interview on the 25th.
On the 25th, did you make arrangements with Sarah Boone to meet with her on the 25th?
So I either made arrangements on the 24th with her before leaving the scene, and I would have told her I would like to meet with you the next day. Or I said, and I may have given her a specific time at that moment, or when we spoke later that evening on the phone, I may have confirmed the time or given her a time then. But she definitely knew that we were meeting at 3 p.m. on the 25th at Orange County Sheriff's Office Central Operations.
And ma'am, you just don't remember at what point in time you informed her or set up this meeting with her. Is that correct?
It's one or the other that
One
I'm.
or the other?
Yes.
Okay. As to it being one or the other, you did you prepared the investigative report in this case, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And the investigative report, you basically summarized everything that took place on this case, up to a certain point.
Yes,
Is that correct?
it was a summary, yes.
All right, as far as evidence, as far as witnesses who were talked to and synopsis of what they said to you at that time, is that correct?
Yes, things that I did specifically. It was a summary of that.
I found your investigative report to be in great detail because it helped me track this case from basically beginning to, not to the end, but to the point where the report stops. And it seems like in your investigative report, you are very thorough about details. Is that correct?
I would say I'm a detailed person. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So being the detailed person you are, and absolutely doing your law enforcement training, they tell you, or they train you that your reports should be very much in detail. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay? Because you might have to refer back to them at a later time. Is that one of the reasons? Is that correct?
Yes, and to prepare myself for depositions and trials.
Okay, and just to give an accurate picture of what you did and what took place and what people told you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Being as thorough as you are with these contacts with people, I didn't see in the investigative report when the arrangement was made with Sarah Boone to meet you down, and where did y'all meet?
The Orange County Sheriff's Office Central Operations.
All right. To meet you at the Orange County Sheriff's Office. I did not see that in the report. Do you have an explanation why?
It's not typically something I would put in my report.
Okay. Do you remember in having the conversation with Ms. Boone about this meeting that was supposed to take place, that you said that you could not return the phone to her that day because you were not feeling very good. You remember telling her that?
That never happened.
Okay. Ma'am? Judge, if I could have a moment.
Yes, sir, of course.
Ma'am, during this time frame, were you pregnant at this time, at that time?
Yes, I was.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, Ms. Boone, there was a meeting arranged. Is that correct?
For the 25th at 3 p.m., yes.
Yes, and Ms. Boone showed up for that meeting.
She did.
25th.
Yes.
That we saw. Okay. Now, ma'am, I'd like to talk to you about some other investigation. On witnesses, other witnesses that you took their testimony or statements, recorded statements at different times. Okay? Do you remember Abraham Moreno?
Yes.
Okay. Did you take his recorded statement?
Yes, I did.
All right. At the time that you took Mr. Moreno's recorded statement, was there anyone else with you?
My partner should have been with me, Detective Scott Lowen.
Excuse me?
My partner should have been with me, Detective Scott Lowen.
Okay. Ma'am, as to who was with you, would it help refresh your memory if you were to see your investigative report as to that interview?
Your Honor, I would object. She hasn't said that she needs any aid in refreshing her memory.
Objection sustained.
Ma'am, was Detective Scott Lowen with you during that interview?
Yes, I believe so.
May we approach?
Yes.
Ma'am, do you have an independent memory of Detective Scott Lowen being with you at that interview?
I believe my partner was with me on the interview. Yes, I typically wouldn't go and do some follow-up without my partner being with me.
Thank you very much. Now, ma'am, did that interview, what date did that interview take place on?
I believe the 26th, February 26th of 2020.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am, was that interview recorded?
It was audio recorded.
Was the entire interview audio recorded?
Yes, the entire interview was audio recorded.
Ma'am, are you familiar with a witness by the name of Brandon Moats?
Yes, I am.
On February the 27th of 2020, did you interview Brandon Moats?
I believe so. It was either the 26th or 27th, yes.
If you were to see your investigative report, would that help refresh your memory?
All right, I would again object. She hasn't indicated that she needs assistance with her memory.
Approach. Objection sustained.
Ma'am, if it was the 27th, you would not disagree with that, would you?
Well, I just stated that it was either the 26th or 27th.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am, Mr. Moats, he was the neighbor living in the apartment, or the connecting apartment, wall apartment, with Ms. Boone and Mr. Torres, is that correct?
Yes.
And he's the one who told you about the loud noise, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you interview anyone else in reference to that loud noise?
So I was interviewing Brandon, and then my partner was interviewing Vincent, the other witness, and I came in at the end of the interview with Detective Lowen.
Okay, so that's Vincent. Do you know his last name?
I would butcher it.
Me too, but Tagalua, something like that. We're talking about the same person?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did that interview take place on February the 27th of 2020?
I believe so. I interviewed witnesses after I interviewed Sarah. The 26th or 27th would be my memory.
Okay, thank you. And then, did he also talk to you about a loud noise?
I believe that I was refreshed on the conversation, and yes, he expressed hearing a loud noise as well.
Okay, thank you. Now, and those interviews were actually audio recorded too, is that correct?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Now, let's go to Ms. Boone's interview. And that would have took place on the 25th, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Boone came down. And, ma'am, prior to Ms. Boone coming down for the interview, had y'all made the decision that Ms. Boone was going to be arrested?
Yes, I plan to arrest Sarah Boone.
Okay. Did you tell Ms. Boone in arranging the meeting that when she came down there, she was going to be arrested?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as to relevance.
Approach.
Ma'am, at that time, you did not tell Ms. Boone, prior to coming down there, that she was going to be arrested. Is that correct?
No, I did not.
Okay. Why did you not tell Ms. Boone that she was going to be arrested?
We planned to meet at 3 p.m. and go over the autopsy and have another interview. So, I mean, I'm not sure why I would tell her that she's going to be arrested. That would potentially cause her to flee, not come, and then we have to go find her and make it more difficult for everyone.
Or potentially get an attorney to come with her?
She was read her rights that said that she has a right to an attorney, and if one cannot be provided for her, she will be appointed one.
I understand that. You read her those rights when she got there. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
You didn't read those rights to her before she got there, though, did she?
I wasn't in contact with her, like physical contact with her.
Okay. So, but you said potentially for fleeing. My question was, potentially she could have got an attorney too to come with her. Is that not correct?
I misunderstood your question. I didn't hear potentially bring an attorney with her, but yes, I guess she potentially brought an attorney with her.
So Ms. Boone shows up, and you tell her there's some things that we need to talk about. Is that correct?
Specific verbiage, I know I said something along the lines of, obviously the autopsy had been conducted, and there were things that we needed to talk about in regards to that.
And prior to discussing it with her and asking her questions, you did read her Miranda warnings, is that correct?
Prior to, I'm sorry, one more time?
Before you started asking her questions, though, in this interview, before you started asking Ms. Boone's questions, you read her Miranda warnings, is that correct?
Yes, before I started asking any sort of potentially incriminating questions, she was read her Miranda warnings, yes.
Okay. Ma'am, do you remember, as part of the Miranda warnings that you read to Ms. Boone, did you read her the one that states that if you decide to answer questions but want to stop answering and consult with an attorney, you may do so? Do you independently remember reading Ms. Boone that instruction?
I don't recall that specific, but I do have my Miranda card on me, but I don't recall that that's what that says. But it is on audio and video recording.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, ma'am, at that point in time, Ms. Boone wasn't under arrest, is that correct?
Ms. Boone was not going to be free to leave once she was in my custody.
At that point in time, had you told Ms. Boone that she was not free to leave?
No, I did not.
At that point in time, had you told Ms. Boone that she was under arrest?
I told her at the end of the interview.
Okay, before the interview.
No, I did not tell her before the interview.
Ma'am, why didn't you tell her before the interview?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as to asked and answered.
Overruled.
So I have to read her Miranda warnings, and that's what I did. I do not have to tell her that she is under arrest at that time.
Was there a reason, could you have told her that she was under arrest before reading her Miranda warning?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as it calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Ma'am, was it a strategic decision not to tell Ms. Boone that she was under arrest prior to reading her those Miranda warnings.
Your Honor, I'm going to object as to relevance.
Approach. The objection is sustained.
Ma'am, and we were able to see the video of the interview. As a process of interviewing people such as Ms. Boone, or well, let me specifically. In the process of interviewing Ms. Boone, is law enforcement free to give information that might not be accurate or true during the interview process?
Are you asking if we're allowed to lie to her?
Yes.
Yes, to an extent.
Was that done at any time in this interview?
Did I lie to her? I don't recall lying to her, no.
May I confer, Judge?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I have no further questions.
Any redirect examination?
No, Your Honor.
Can this witness be released? State.
We have her subject to recall.
Okay.
Subject to recall.
All right, ma'am, you're released subject to recall. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
State, any other witnesses, evidence, or testimony to be produced?
Your Honor, at this time, the state would rest.
Okay. Members of the jury, it is 10:22 a.m. I have some matters with counsel that I need to address, so we're going to excuse you for a short while.